there's some way to see more effects, but it's not responding to the buttons. Cause see, you got all these effects down here. Maybe it's this button. No, it ain't that
It's
button.
recording by the
Is it recording? Oh, well, good. You can edit that out. All right,
uh,
let's hit it. You got the dates for this
yeah.
Lakeland?
All right. So this podcast, again, we're going to trying to stick to a timeline here. Ava was in Nationwide Children's NICU from January 1st until late March, and then she went home and she continued having a lot of health challenges. In April of 2008, we we had heard from our church community that there was a revival going on in Lakeland, Florida. And to familiarize anyone who may not be familiar with this, so the Lakeland revival went from it went from April until October of 2008. And then it kind of continued on after that, but the main part of it was April through October. And it was basically headed up by a guy named Todd Bentley, who has since been
Wow.
disproven as a raging heretic.
Oh yeah. He was
I
proven to
digress.
be on stage drunk,
Yeah.
or at least drinking, and had an affair at while this was going on.
There's
I'm pretty sure I might have those facts wrong, but I'm pretty darn sure.
I am going to include a link on this podcast to a really good deep dive that a channel called Long for Truth did on Todd Bentley and just his history, because it's important. Like, if you're going to put your faith in a teacher
Yeah.
and you find out that, I mean, his history is dark.
Oh yeah.
So
That'll matter here in a minute.
that'll matter. So, but again, we were right smack dab in the middle of this Ava catastrophe in our family. And at the same time, one of the pastors in our church was fighting basically a life threatening illness.
Yeah. Cancer.
And so there was another family who had a child with, I don't want to give too many details, but basically there was a family in our congregation who had a son with a diagnosis that they had been praying over for a long time. And so one of our pastors who had this life threatening diagnosis, and at least one of the families made a trip down to Lakeland, Florida to see this healer. Todd Bentley had portrayed himself as having a gift of healing.
Yep.
And several people advised us, hey, you guys should bring Ava down there. And
Yeah.
I mean, she was so fragile at the point or she was so fragile at that point, there was no way we would have made the trip.
Yeah.
But
We thought about it.
we did think about it.
Yep, we did.
So these people, that was in our circle traveled down to Lakeland, Florida. And I don't remember exactly the the testimony that our pastor gave about Todd Bentley. I know you might be able to
I remember
expand on
more.
that,
Some.
but the other family that took their son down to be prayed over, he's still to this day not healed of his diagnosis. And
Nope.
you know that was, I guess, I don't, the point is not to bring up them, but it's more so to focus on what Kenny and I were seeing back then. Was this guy was supposed to have the gift of healing, but yet this boy was not healed.
Right.
And we were starting to question then, like, what's going on here? If this guy's got the gift of healing, why is this person getting healed but this one's not?
Yep.
And that's, looking back, we noticed, and that is a underlying theme in this whole movement, is these supposed faith healers. I mean, they heal a lot of backs and they heal a lot of migraines, supposedly,
Mm-hmm.
but these serious illnesses, like our daughter, like people who are wheelchair bound, um, these are not being healed. And there's always some kind of reason. Um, but I don't want to get sucked into the
Well, yeah, that's a whole
that
video
that could definitely
or,
bring out some
or
bitter feelings. But
it's a whole podcast of itself. But
yeah,
part of why we bring this up is because the pastor going down there essentially that reinforces and or endorses that this is a good thing, right? That I don't want to like spend too much time here, or like Vicky said, I don't like revealing a whole lots of details, but I need to say that you're giving like a full-throated endorsement to this is what happens, because it was no secret that he was going and he was seeking the healing for the condition that he had, which on the surface, I mean, I can't say I blame them for that. However, I absolutely see it very differently today. Look. The simple thing to think is, look at this. Okay, if God is the God that He is, He's the omnipresent, Almighty God of the universe. Do we have to go to the other end of the country to some guy to get healing? No.
Yep.
But when your pastor is not healed of the disease that he has, the problem he has, I should say, and he's going down there, and so are many others, to seek healing from a healer, what's that say? What's that make you think? And the reason why we point that out is because while this pastor actually did end up getting called up on stage, and the whole fall over thing happened, and I remember afterwards he said, I felt like a burning in me, and I'm not a kind of guy to just fall over easy, but when he, I don't know what the God the healer did, but I'm assuming he hit his head or he something. He said, I just fell over, and I remember hearing him tell the story. This wasn't he did tell this story, I believe, from the pulpit, but he told a more in-depth version of it in, I think, one of our groups or men's group or something. And, I mean, come on now. I'm listening to this going, hey, this sounds legit, right? He fell over. Well, he's not a guy I would think would just fall over to fake it. And I still, to this day, don't want to say that he did fake it, but he wasn't healed. Okay, now he did go, again, not trying to reveal too many details, but the condition seem to get healed, but it wasn't then. It came later, and it came through some doctors' interventions and some other things. I'm not going to say God was involved, because he probably was.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest. It's not like he went down there and this guy said, boom, you're healed, and it was gone forever. That did not happen.
Yeah.
What did happen is, through the medical field, through processes, through scans, yes, that affliction did go away and seems to be at bay to this day, although it's recurred, but it seems to be at bay. So we got to be honest with that. But again, this endorsement of this revival is, this was almost like what was the one in Asbury? Yeah, Asbury.
Yeah.
When that was going on, everybody was all googly eyed over it, right? Like, this is going to be the revival that breaks out in the country, and everybody's going to get saved, and we're going to have a third great awakening. Well, they were saying the same thing about Lakeland.
Yeah.
And look what happened.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, yes, it does anger me, but I'm not trying to go that direction right here. I'm only saying that's what was being said about Lakeland at the time, and especially in our circles. And look what happened. And if you don't know, just go look it up. You'll see it was a fraud. It was a fraud.
Yeah.
Did somebody get healed there? Possibly. But that was totally because God chose to, not because anyone at Lakeland made it happen.
Yeah, Todd Bentley has a very dark past, and I know we're going to get some hate, because there's some die-hard Lakeland Revival adherents out there, and whatever, that's fine.
Sure.
But Todd Bentley has a super sketchy past, and and to reiterate, like, God can heal in the midst of false teaching.
Sure, he can.
No dispute on that at all. But so I don't want to continue,
that'll
as
get you
they
sucked
say,
into
beating a
rabbit
dead
hole,
horse.
But that was needed to be said, because this really sets something off for the future of the church and what direction in our lives. This is a big point.
Yeah.
Where that starts to happen.
Something else that happened in this general time frame. Somebody in our church community I want to say it was somebody in the actual family that ran the church, but I can't remember now, and it doesn't really matter who it was, but somebody prophesied over you and said that you were going to play a role in
Yeah.
healing Ava. So they
Yeah.
prophesied a gift of healing over you. And I remember this tormented you for years
Oh yeah.
because you kept saying, you were convinced
Hmm.
that you were going to play a role in somehow healing Ava. And what
Yeah.
kind of crappy weight is that to put on a dad of this medically fragile child? And I remember, and I'll just bring up something funny that happened in those early days. So Kenny was prophesied over,
Yeah.
and we we were we had a flock of chickens, and anyone who has chickens knows that chickens can come back from like brutal injuries and
Oh yeah.
survive.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't remember exactly what happened, but we had this chicken that somehow got gravely injured, and Kenny thought he killed it, like accidentally killed it.
Yeah.
And so he described how he was in the shower and that God spoke to him
Yeah.
and said, "Go lay hands on that chicken and heal it."
Yeah.
And so
I thought
Kenny
it
went
was
out.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he felt stupid and he went out and laid hands
I
on this
did.
chicken.
Yeah.
And, he came in, he goes, "Vicky, I think I healed this chicken."
I know.
And we were so like, we legitly thought back then that this must be the beginning of the gift of healing.
Uh huh. Yeah. No, it's funny now, but I had that internal conflict of what am I doing wrong? And now, I felt like I was grieving the Holy Spirit, right? He's telling me, you just need to trust me. Go do this and you'll see. You'll see. Of course, you need to know that that chicken didn't immediately get better. It was days later, and as Vicky said, chickens can survive anything practically. But when you've been told this and you're desperate for your daughter's healing, you'll do anything. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I think it becomes it when it's the false teaching. And a small piece to this that I think is important. And I spoke earlier, and I don't know where the listener will be in the podcast, but I did speak a little earlier about a struggle I had that I was immediately convicted of when I was first saved. And that addiction or whatnot was a struggle for a long time, and I was feeling guilt that, remember, you're being told if you're not healed or you're not getting healing or something, you may have sin in your life. That was another. I don't know if we spoke about that yet, but that was definitely said. So there's a level of, am I getting in the way of my daughter's healing? And so I had a lot of guilt that not only am I now prophesied over, essentially, that I'm going to heal her, or I could have that power, or I don't remember exactly how they said it, but I do remember, if I remember correctly, it was worded in such a way the person said, I feel like God is telling me you're going to heal Ava, or you're going to be a part of that, or I see a healing spirit on you, something like that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just from some willy-nilly person in the congregation. That was somebody who you would consider of importance.
Yeah.
So you couple this, I'll say, guilt of this sin in my life, and put on top of that, now you're going to be potentially the one that heals her, to grieve the Holy Spirit, quotation mark, that you are not going to go out and do this thing with this silly chicken. You are like, I need to do this. I have to do this. And man, boy, was that a years long struggle.
And I remember, so I'm going to share another quick story about something that I was told. And this was early on. This was the first 6 months of her life. Um, so I had a woman come up to me after service one day, and it was a very common theme, especially in those early days. People would come up, they would ask about Ava, how's she doing? How are you doing?
Hmm.
And so this woman came up to me and she said, and by this time we had heard this many, many times, but she came up to me and she said, God told me, God gave me a dream that he's going to heal Ava. And by that time, what started out to be comforting to me was starting to become a burden because we had been told this so many times just in the first 6 months and it wasn't happening. And so I remember I responded to this woman, and I was very nice about it, but I said to her, um, I believe God can heal Ava whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
And if he chooses not to heal her in this life, then I have to trust him.
Yep.
And she looked at me and she said, "Stand behind me, Satan." And I remember just, I think I was rendered speechless for a few moments because I was like, what?
Yeah.
And she said, "We're not going to speak those words over her life.
Mm.
We're only going to speak healing and, wholeness, whatever she said over her." But it was as if like I was in a mental space at that time where I had to, in order to survive mentally, I had to come to a level of acceptance of
Hmm.
what this is what our life is.
Yeah.
Like nobody's living this life for me. Nobody's caring for this child. I have to survive. And so I had come to a point where I wasn't happy with the situation, but I also was not mad at God.
Right.
I wished he would heal Ava, absolutely, but I was not in any way bitter. And when I was, the Bible tells us to rest in the Lord. I was actively trying to rest in the Lord, and nobody in that community, when I said, I believe God can heal her whenever he wants to, and if he chooses not to, that phrase was a trigger. If he chooses not to. And that's when the whole "it's always God's will to heal people" would heavily push back.
Yeah.
They didn't want you to rest in him.
Mm-mm.
They wanted you living in that constant hope of, well, she's going to get healed if we just do this, or if we just do this, or if we just do this. And so I just remember how difficult it was. But not to get too far off track, I was in that mental space at the time where I was quietly accepting
Yeah.
what was going on. And during this time of life, Kenny was really struggling with, he had had this burden laid on him that he was somehow going to play a role in Ava's healing, and it wasn't happening. And I was watching in real time as he was struggling with, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Is there some sin that I'm struggling with that's inhibiting her healing? And he was just really struggling, and it was upsetting to me to see that, because it wasn't that I doubted that he was going to play a role in her healing. I was definitely hopeful, but I could see the weight it was putting on him, and that wasn't fair.
Yeah. It was not fun, and a little small story to go with that. But before I say it, um, I see it now, obviously. But when those people talk about that, they almost poo-poo on the idea that you've got to trust God. I think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What did they say? Right? That
Oh
about.
yeah.
I mean, if our God does not save us,
My God will save me, and my God can save me,
yeah,
and my God will save me. And even if
if he
he doesn't, yeah.
yeah. But I remember, because keep in mind, in those circles, there is the prophetic gifts, and there are those who can teach it or have it or whatever. And so healers, faith healers, something you hear a lot, exist, supposedly, right? Exist inside of that thinking, and that person can either impartate that gift to you, like is claimed that the apostles, like what the apostles actually did do, right, with the Holy Spirit, or with the with the healing power that the apostles could pass on. And obviously we know God can do it too, but in your scriptures there is a literal, they laid hands on them to receive, and then they received, and they had the ability to heal others. Okay, so they take that to the nth level, and you go and see this healer, and school of Bethel's school of supernatural whatever, and several of these other places still teach that today. But I remember there was I don't even remember the guy's name or any of the connection, but there was some guy who was supposedly a healer.
I'm going to try
And
to look up his name while you're talking about
okay,
that.
and I don't, maybe Vicky can find it, but this gentleman, it was claimed, had performed or had witnessed, others had witnessed actual miracles. Now I don't know what healings and miracles they meant, and I it was spoke of, but I just can't remember. But all I remember is that I'm starting to struggle with this not seeing any actual healing. I'm hearing a lot about it. I'm being prophesied over that I could do it. I want to see it in my daughter. All of this is going on, and I remember that someone, again in leadership at the church had said, "I know so and so," and maybe Vicky finds the name, but I know so and so, and he's a healer up
Oh,
north.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
He had
and
passed away.
yes, this person is, and I asked him. I said, "Well, have you seen healings, or is it legit?" And they said, "Yes, I've seen some healings there," and I don't remember what they told me. And this was a person who I would have believed. Um, so they told me the name, and it was so and so Healing Ministries, and they I don't know if they did conferences or anything, but they definitely, you could go to this church and visit. And so I wanted to go see this guy. But I kind of put it off a little bit because he was a couple hours north, and we were super busy and things with Ava, blah 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 blah. And I remember I'm like, I need to go see this guy. And I remember I was conflicted for so long, for months it seemed like. I need to go see this guy. I need to go see this guy. I need to go see this guy. I don't know how long, probably 6 months passed, something like that. And I finally got the courage. I'm like, okay, I am going to go see this guy. And I went back to the person who told me about him, and I said, "Can you please give me that info again? I want to make sure I got the right address or the right name, and I want to go and reach out to this person." Well, they had passed away. I was crushed
Yeah.
because I thought I just missed my opportunity. I waited too long. My chance is gone.
Yeah.
Now, how sad of a situation, looking at it now, how sad of a situation is that? If you're honest, I think that's worse than the actual lack of faith. This was a lack of faith in God. If that's how I see it now, because God is the ultimate healer and can heal. He does not need some guy hours away to heal anybody. This is the God of the universe that can heal someone no matter what, anytime, anywhere, any condition. And if someone actually has the power to heal, which they do it through God's power, obviously, but take a disciple, right? The disciple was given special powers by God to heal. What happened when they healed? It was immediate and
Yeah.
it was complete. You didn't see a crippled man have to go do 20 different things before he finally walked. He got up and he walked.
Yeah.
You didn't see a dead person, which we've never seen a dead person come back, although I've heard some funny stories that's not real.
We're
Like,
not saying it hasn't happened,
I'm
but
not
we've
saying it hasn't happened, but people say, "Well, I prayed for some." Well, even the story I heard about someone who did come back, they were not prayed over, and someone touched them and said, "Be healed." They just prayed for them, and hours later, they were alive again.
yeah.
And okay, like, but that wasn't someone that walked up and said, "Be healed." So this it was crushing, and that was I didn't recover easily from that one for a while.
I was thinking of when I said I was going to look up the name while you're talking, I was thinking of somebody else. I do remember the one you're talking about,
Hmm.
but the guy I was thinking of was we have mutual friends who I want to say Ava was probably around
Okay.
2 or 3. We were told that there was this healer coming to a church in Dublin,
Yeah, I remember this.
and I think it was Church of the Zion,
Hmm.
but same type of church, charismatic church that we were attending. Um,
They were a little more
they
extreme,
were a
but
little more hyper charismatic.
but yes, yes.
Um, but yeah, so I was told by a friend of mine that there was this well-known healer
Hmm.
coming to Church of the Zion, and I want to say this was in 2011, something like that, 2000, somewhere around there. Once again, Kenny and I were looking for any way to heal Ava.
Yep. Yep.
And so we went to this church. We took Ava, packed her up,
Yep.
ventilator and all,
Yep.
took her to this church. And I remember the service, the beginning service was there was a lot of speaking in tongues, and I
Hmm.
remember there was just a lot of showboating
Oh man,
on the part of this man. He came out and he was just
who
very
wants to be healed
flamboyant.
today?
Yeah,
Watching
who
the
wants
crowd
to be
points at
healed today?
people.
And he pointed to this one lady, and she kind of fell out and was gyrating in the
Yeah.
aisle, and he
Yep.
was just this smug, like, "Oh, look at what I did." And
Oh man.
it was, we were both really struggling with, if I'm honest, we both felt it was very fake.
Yep.
But we were still trying
But we wanted to
to,
see Ava healed.
we wanted to see Ava healed.
Yep.
Um, but Kenny, when the guy finally got to where he was praying for people,
Mm-hmm.
this long line formed. There was all these people, and looking back, it's so sad. Like, these are desperate people that really want healing.
Yep.
He carried Ava, ventilator slung over his shoulder. We're in line, and we get up to this guy, and I remember he just did this half-hearted prayer over her, and I was mad. Like, I remember I looked into this guy's eyes, and I told Kenny later, I said, I felt like I was looking into the eyes of a demon.
Yeah.
His eyes were just dark.
Yeah. I remember.
And but I was mad, and I remember we got out, we got through the line,
Mm.
and we basically got out of the line, and I'm pretty sure we immediately headed for the car.
Yeah.
And we got in the car, and he looked at me and said, "What did you think?" And I said, I'm angry.
Yeah.
I said, I think that was nothing but a bunch of fakery.
Yep.
And so I remember at some point talking to this friend who had referred us to this guy, and they had been there too, but we were talking about how I needed to be in constant prayer for Ava. And this friend said, you need to have communion with her every day. And you need to be praying these. She's like, make a list of these verses
Yep.
and pray over her every day. And it was just this exhausting, just constantly something that I needed to do. And I can't even tell you how many times we fasted and prayed. I mean, it was so many times. And so I don't, when I hear somebody say that God told them that they need to fast and pray for somebody in their life, and that person was healed, I just don't believe it was the fasting and praying. I don't believe it's anything we do
Yeah.
that causes healing. I believe it's it's in God's mercy. What's the verse? He has mercy on who we will have mercy, and
Mm.
I can't remember it now, but you know, for so long we were on this endless hamster wheel of things that people, we did everything that people told us we needed to do.
Yep.
And after so many years, it caused this deep, deep spiritual tiredness. And that's something we're going to get into later, but I feel like we kind of got off track a little bit, but the whole purpose of this particular podcast was, to talk about things like the Lakeland revival, and how Kenny was prophesied over that he was going to have a gift of healing, and how we took Ava to another healing evangelist, and none of this worked.
Yeah. We did drift a little, but it's all in the same idea that the church is endorsing these things. That's the kind of the purpose of that, right? That the
Yeah.
Lakeland revival is brought up because the pastor directly uh, endorses this. But all of these types of things were endorsed. That the healer person that I was to go see, this place that we went that Vicky just described with this weird dude, uh, was by some at least known and by our church, and that you go and you, in other words, the idea is what's being endorsed is that you go and you go to a healer, or you can at least go to a healer to be healed.
Yeah.
And I mean, where is that in your scripture? Now they'll say, oh, well, the apostles are wouldn't. It's just not, that's totally not how that is in context, but that's the idea. If you need special healing,
Yeah.
you can go see someone who's a specialist in it and receive it.
And I think that's kind of a good place to wrap up with this particular segment is Kenny and I, and we will probably reiterate this a dozen or more times as we go through this series. We always have trusted God with Ava's healing. We've
Absolutely.
always believed God can heal her whenever he wants to.
Yep.
But it was taught that, and we would tell these people, like, I believe God can heal Ava. Why do we need to go see this healer? Well,
Yeah.
God's moving through this person. We heard that a lot. God's moving through
Oh,
Todd Bentley. God's moving through this other healer.
yep.
Okay, so we can't just go to God directly.
Yeah. Thought
Well,
Jesus was our high priest.
yeah, Jesus is our high priest, and
Sorry.
you look back and you're like, man, I'm one of those people. If a lot of times, if somebody confronts me on something, and maybe I don't oftentimes, depending on the topic, I'm not always quick on my feet. Oftentimes, I will have to walk away from a conversation and ponder it, and then like I'll say, man, I wish I would have thought of this back then. I have so many of those reflections now because I have so many, for lack of better words, good comebacks. Um, and that's not even the point. Like, it's not like I'm trying to win an argument here, but back then I feel like we were toyed with so much, and I don't think it was done intentionally. I think maybe some people, I mean, it's not up to me to decide who was intentionally deceiving and who was just self-deceived. But the fact is we were deceived. This
Yep.
was false teaching, and for years we were we were toyed with, our family was toyed with, and the whole time we trusted God with our daughter's healing.
Mm.
We were never mad at God.
No.
Um, and I know so many people that have experienced similar things with these type of circles. And I know you'll probably hear us say charismatic a lot. Um, Not all charismatics are bad by any stretch of the word. Charismatic,
Yeah.
like we said, just simply means a belief in the continuation of the gifts of the Spirit.
Right.
There's a lot of solid Bible believing charismatics. The circles we were in, I would call more of a hyper charismatic, but on top of that, you had the new thought, the new age, the new apostolic reformation, and we'll get
Oh yeah.
into all of that a lot deeper.
Yeah.
That's where the teachings really got crazy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap up for now, and
Yep.
we'll see you back on the next one.
Okay.